Hello everybody. Welcome to our February webinar in the scope of UGPN webinar series. And today we are going to have presentations by two invited people. And this UGPN is a collaboration among three universities: University of Surrey, University of North Carolina, and University of Sao Paolo, and also in the scope of this Global Center for Clean Air Research. We are going to have these webinars. They will go in the scope of this UGPN until May 2025. The webinar, they always be on the first Wednesday of every month between 4 and 5 p.m. GMT. We are having two speakers in each webinar, and we can see all the previous webinars on the GCare YouTube channel. They are available, and then you can see the many different aspects, and very important because in this UGPN, this last one that we have approved is related to nature-based solutions. The title of this UGPN is Prescription of Nature-Based Solutions to City. And this NBS project, it's led by Professor Prashant Kumar, that's the director of GCare at the University of Surrey, and myself from the University of Sao Paulo, and Professor Rajan Parajuli from the North Carolina State University. We have a big group of people that collaborate in this initiative from all the three universities: University of Surrey, University of Sao Paulo, and North Carolina State University, and join people from Brazil, UK, China, and Australia. The focus of this, it's not only a project, but it's a network, is advancing nature-based air quality solutions to mitigate urban environmental change. The vision of this network is to promote sustainable nature-based solutions through innovative monitoring, AI, modeling, and citizen science to build resilient cities. The key objectives that were established was to establish a global UGPN network for nature-based solutions in urban areas, create case studies to tailor NBS prescriptions for cities like Sao Paulo, Raleigh, and Guildford, facilitate knowledge exchanging through staff-students mobility, and produce joint publications and new proposals for international funding opportunities. And today, we are very keen to have two speakers, and I am going to first call the first speakers, but we are going to have Professor Xavier Matilla Ayala, urban planner, consultant and professor from the University of Politècnica, Catalunya, and Alejandra Betancourt. She's a PhD student at North Carolina State University. And first, I would like to invite Professor Xavier Matilla Ayala to present his seminar that is Creating Proximity Conditions. Please, Professor Xavier, the floor is yours. Oh, sorry, I have to read your, sorry, I'm not, I just forget that I am going to introduce you first with your biography. Professor Xavier is an architect, urban planner, and professor based in Barcelona. His academic and professional career has focused on urban and territorial planning, and especially on urban regeneration linked to proximity and naturalization strategies. Chief architect of the city of Barcelona from 2019 to 2023, and during this period he led and oversaw the Barcelona Superblock program, internationally recognized as an urban strategy to transform city streets into greener, healthier, and stronger social and economic relations spaces. He also implemented Barcelona's School Streets program, which has improved the environmental quality and safety of more than 200 school environments, as well as public space transformations on Meridiana Avenue, Parc de Glòries, and Villa Laietana, among others. Professor at the Department of Urbanism, Territorial Landscape at the Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya, at the Master Metropolitan Institute of Barcelona, and guest lecturer in several universities. Please, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Maria, for your kind introduction, and also thank you to UGPN for your invitation. Let me try to share my presentation. We will start then. Going there. Full screen. So I guess yes. It's working properly. Perfect. So perfect. Thank you. Of course, we will talk today about proximity. And I also will talk about my recent experience in Barcelona regarding this topic, how to create proximity conditions. But let me start because proximity probably has become a kind of trending topic that we use all time in order to, it's a kind of solution that we could think that it's useful for all to solve all kind of problems. But I think it's always important to go back to the origin of the question and why proximity should be the answer, should be the solution to some of the problems that we are facing today in our cities. And probably the first idea today is to understand that proximity can be, I would say better, should be the answer to this post-industrial city that shifts from these ancient chimneys, provoking these environmental problems, into these new car chimneys within this car-based urban model or car-based mobility model that probably is on the center of our problems in our cities today. So the first idea is proximity can be the new idea to shift into a new urban model that is able to improve how are these environmental conditions as a place for living. Of course, this car-based development model is directly linked with climate change impacts. This is a recent picture from the floods, the episode floods that we suffered last October in Valencia, Spain, where cars were just in the center of some of these impressive pictures that someone took there. And cars and mobility is also linked with this climate change problem we're facing, but it's not only a problem of environment, it's also a problem regarding our lifestyle and how this car-based mobility is pushing us into a more individualism and sedentarism lifestyle that we are suffering also today. So I like to recover this picture from the Wall-E movie that showed that kind of ironic final situation of some people that are not able even to walk because they are only used to stay sit on watching some screens. And of course, it's also about how can we balance what is happening in our cities and specifically in public space, and how can we reverse the priorities on public space and specifically streets where right now car is occupying more than the 50% of the surface, and people is only using a little bit part of that kind of public space. So this picture is showing that we also should think that we need to recover the asphalt surface from cars to be able to give it back to people, to be able to promote this community life and community activities. And finally, this first conceptual part, I think it's important, how are we able to provide more optimistic visions of the future? We are permanently attacked with that kind of pessimistic and apocalyptic visions of our future. And I think it's important to understand that proximity is able also to provide a new pictures and provide new challenges. I would say I love to recover this motto from the Biennale Arquitectura in Venezia in 2021, who is inviting us to rethink the future, thinking that it will be, or it can be a place where we can live all together without not doing differences between kind of people and different possibilities, but thinking that cities should be a place where we will be able to live all together with the same quality of life for everyone. And it's also important not only to make plans and to define strategies, but to make changes a reality. So this is a picture of one of the recent works that we finished in Barcelona within the program Superblock. We will see later. So the idea that we should also work not only in a long-term vision, but also in a short-term action. So it's important to be able to provide real changes, to make changes reality in order to help people to understand that that kind of changes are absolutely positive for their lives. We talk about proximity, but it's also to understand that our lifestyles are not only on local scale, but they are multi-scalar lifestyles, as well as our cities. So our cities has different scales that we need to take into account when we are planning and when we are defining some policies or strategies. And all of us like time to time to take a plane and going to visit a friend living on another continent, when we are used to move in a metropolitan scale with public transport. And of course, we like to have better conditions on our local scale, understanding that it should be a human scale. The key thing is that we should balance what is happening between these scales. And unfortunately, during the recent decades, the human scale was forgotten. And right now we should focus and to give priority to human scale to be able to reconcile different scales within the city. And if we are talking about proximity, it's also important that, in my opinion, proximity starts with housing. And how are we able to create the conditions that make possible that everyone is able to afford a decent house? In a city, in Barcelona, we made very important efforts to increase the social housing stock within the city, shifting from less than 4,000 units that were there in 2015 till around 10,000 that will be finished this year. So it's important that from different policies and stakeholders, we are able to understand that providing decent housing and affordable housing for everyone, it's absolutely essential if we want to talk about proximity. Proximity is also about how are we able to create mixed-use urban fabrics. This is one of the examples in Barcelona. In the beginning of the century, there was identified a new innovation district that was called 22 At. The idea was to provide the planning conditions to promote change from former industrial area into a new economical activities based on innovation and new technologies on this district. But at the beginning, the balance between residential uses and economical uses was 19% was planned to become economical activities, and only a 10% to become as a residential use. After 20 years, what we realized that it was being transformed into a kind of empty downtown without everyday life, with the weekends, without people. So we decided to change the share of residential uses and economical uses, shifting from the 10% that was planned to be residential till the 30% of that. So we balance between the 70% for economical activities and the 30% for social housing, trying to create better mixed-use conditions within the neighborhood. And it's also important to identify which are the places, the sites, the elements that create this sense of belonging, the sense of belonging within a community. These are some small projects, but very important ones, because the idea is to recover. In this case, there are 2 trees within different neighborhoods within Barcelona. These are the places where people gather after there is a gender violence event in the cities. So it's already significant places for people. So the idea, and we try to improve the conditions of public space of these spaces, recognizing the significance that there is already for people living there. And it's quite important to maintain and to preserve that kind of significance and symbolism that there are existing in the different neighborhoods. And of course, proximity is about how the city is able to provide public facility system all around the neighborhoods. I like to use this idea of pan-centrality. So all the neighborhoods should be an urban center itself. So these two maps are showing above are the public markets of the city of Barcelona, below are the public library system, the city of Barcelona, showing that we could say Barcelona is already a short distance city or 15-minute cities, because during many decades, the city council made important efforts to provide that kind of basic public facilities all around or across the different neighborhoods. But probably our main challenge in cities, and this is in Barcelona, are the streets. So this is why we talk about how can we reconquer the streets to improve these proximity conditions. And on the streets is where Superblock idea makes sense, because basically Superblock idea aims to shift from a car-based mobility model into a new one, who is more efficient. And more efficient means that it's less polluting and also needs less room on public space. So there's only one way to make possible this change, that is reversing priorities of mobility. So shifting from this car-based mobility model into a new one that gives priority to walking, biking, and public transport. This is the way not only to improve environmental conditions, to reduce pollution, but also to recover room, to recover some of the streets that are probably no more needed for through traffic across the city. So the idea of Superblock is to identify which should be this basic structure, the red streets, to provide and to guarantee this through mobility across the city, but also identify which could be these green streets, these green axes that are not needed for this through traffic and can be transformed into a more intensive way, providing room not only for mobility, but also for living. And this is quite important. The first idea is public transport should be the one who defines which are the basic streets in our cities. This is the map of the bus transit network within the Barcelona is the one who decides which is this basic network streets providing these through traffic possibilities. But on the other side, we could identify which are the green axes that are not needed for this traffic, so that can be transformed. So the idea of Superblock is that Superblock should be understood as a way to provide a new environmental and social infrastructure across the city, creating this new system of new green axes interconnected between them, and also connected with the territorial open spaces. So the main idea is that we should transform not only these green axes, but all the streets on the city can be improved, even those that are needed for through traffic, because on every street we could reduce car lanes like this basic streets level, and we could reduce one or two of these car lanes, introducing a bike lane, bus lane, introducing even nature or trees if it's possible. So this is very important. We are not talking about green streets and black streets, good and bad streets, but we are talking that we should try to improve all the streets around the city regarding which is the different roles that they are playing at the city. And we identify the central area of the city of Barcelona. This is the Eixample. This is the central district of the city, the densiest district within the city of Barcelona, just launching this new map of 21 green axes and 21 squares. Located in these crossing areas are these red squares that you can see in the picture, in order to provide this systemical transformation, systemical process of transforming the city, providing proximity of green areas, everybody living within the Eixample of Barcelona. And we identified this central area because on this area are overlapping two different important things. The first one is the area with more car traffic around the city. You can see there in 2019 there were around 350,000 cars that were crossing the city through this central area. It means that there were more cars crossing the city through this central area than the ones that were crossing the city through the ring roads. But at the same time, the central part of the city is the best, well connected with the public transport, metropolitan public transport network. So if there is a proper place to start the transformation, because there are other alternatives to invite people to leave the cars at home and to take public transport, was this central area. And together with this strategic approach, we provide the idea of a new street model. We could see basically based on these 5 principles. I would like to highlight the 2 first ones. So understanding that the street should be an environmental infrastructure. So the street will improve the way that we manage some things like water cycle management, energy, environmental conditions. And the second one, the city should be also a kind of activator of proximity and relations between the private realm and public realm, connecting the inner spaces with the outer spaces within the city. Briefly, the idea of these new streets that we should transform the streets from the subsoil, because subsoil is quite important in order to providing new environmental conditions, introducing more permeability, improving conditions for the green infrastructure, introducing new water cycle solutions like sustainable urban drainage systems on every stretch of the new streets. On the surface, the idea is that these streets cars are allowed to enter on this green axis, but cars are not allowed to go straight when they arrive into intersections. So you follow the blue lines and the arrows. You can see which is the movement that cars are allowed to do on that kind of a street. They are able to enter, but when they are arriving into the next junction, they are obligated to turn the left on this case and to turn the right on the others. This is the way to reduce the amount of cars that are crossing these streets every day. To give you a figure on these streets before the projects that we will see later, there were around 10,000 cars per day. Right now, thanks to that kind of strategies, there are less than 1,000 cars per day on this street. This is also on the air level. This is important just to provide not only more diversity of streets, but increasing the shape of the city. You know, in Barcelona, like all Mediterranean cities, we are already suffering really heat waves in long heat waves in summer. So we believe essential to increase the shade in the city. And this is the picture showing which was this first stage that we finished in 2023. We developed 4 new green axes that mean around 5 kilometers of transformation, providing that kind of figures that you will be able to know if you need to go back to the presentation. Some pictures. This is the former situation of one of these streets. This is Conseil de Seine, the largest one. This one crossing from left to right, just in the center of the district. And this is a picture that we took some months ago, showing how was this transformation. Asphalt has disappeared. There is only one level for everyone. Pedestrians can walk by the middle of the city. Permeable surfaces has increased from 1% till 15%. There are new urban furniture that are really activator of these community functions, and so on. You can see here some pictures of these ideas that connecting facades between them without any topographical barrier, increasing green areas. And you can see the picture on the right, and some achievements that are able that it's possible to reach if we are transforming the cities. For instance, the summer on 2023, after the transformation, we checked that the temperature of the surface of this area has decreased 5 centigrade degrees, just removing asphalt and providing stone or different new pavements that has a better performance in front of heat. And some of the transformations of these junction areas, that kind of squares, around 2,000 square meters, the former situation and the new one, the possibility to create new parks, pocket parks, we could say, that was a kind of public space that didn't exist even before in this area of the city of Barcelona in the Champlain. Briefly, some of the pictures of this. And let me finish with one more project regarding the schools. If we talk about proximity, schools could play a really important role. It's a kind of game changer, because everybody understand that in front of the schools where our children are spending most of their time is a really important place to be improved in terms of environmental conditions, safety, and so on. At the end of 2019, a 5-year-old kid was killed by a motorbike in front of a school in Barcelona. It was a moment the mayor called us and asked us to start a new program in order to improve the conditions in front of all of the schools of the city of Barcelona. So after 3 years, in 2023, basically what we made is to understand that the schools is a kind of acupuncture map across the city, providing hotspots that if we are able to improve these hotspots, the surrounding areas of all the schools, we will be able to improve the entire city, just a change in the scale. Some of different small scale projects are able to provide a larger transformation around the city. After 3 years, we had transformed more than 200 surrounding areas of the schools, and the transformation was more or less like these ones that are showing to you. This is the former situation in front of the school, and this is the situation after intervention. You can see there are really soft interventions with tactical solutions, but really useful. And I can assure you the feedback from the communities of the schools has been absolutely positive after the different transformation. There is another case showing that kind of transformations in front of the schools. And some of the figures after these 3 years, so 218 schools transformed, it means that we were able to recover around 35,000 square meters of asphalt that before the program were used only by cars, and right now are places for people and for living, for daily life for people. And I finished just telling and sharing with you that, of course, that kind of changes that are focused on how are we able to change people behavior are not easy. So, of course, there were controversy, really hard controversy at the beginning of the first Superblock intervention. But it's important to understand that we cannot avoid that kind of controversy. What we should do is to be prepared to manage controversy in the city. We cannot wait to have 100% of consensus of that kind. It would be impossible. If we were waiting to that, it was impossible to start anything. But when we to be prepared to provide a really important participatory process, to be transparent, to create the different places where we are able to exchange with people living there, and to be prepared to improve the project if it's necessary through its development. We use a digital platform, an open source digital platform, the CDN, that it was really, really useful to provide and to make possible to follow all the documents regarding different projects, to create digital forums, to exchange with people living and different stakeholders involved. And finally, the best way to manage controversy and to show that that kind of transformations are working properly is to provide data. So data is absolutely essential in order to understand if we are achieving goals or not. I told you before that in 2019, there were 350,000 cars crossing the center of the city. After that kind of transformations, not only the ones that we showed today, there are many others, but the amount of cars crossing the center area of the city has decreased 18%. So there were 65,000 cars less every day crossing the center of the city. Or for instance, in 2023 and 2024, the city was able to comply with European pollution limits for the first time in 2023 and for the second time in a row in 2024. So the transformations were really useful to improve the environmental conditions and reducing air pollution all around the city. And that's all from my side. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was amazing to see how you were able to change the city. It is completely much more well-being for the kids, for the schools. Yeah.
It was a really short explanation, but hopefully I think it was enough to make possible to understand which was the idea, what kind of interventions it was about.
Yes. We are going to have the questions and answers after the presentations. So now I would like to invite Alejandra Betancourt. She's a biologist from the Venezuelan Andes, has dedicated her career to understand and protecting natural space through expertise in landscape ecology and remote sensing. She has contributed to climate change research and ecosystem classification in Venezuela and pursued a master's in environmental science in Uruguay, focusing on subtropical forests and ecological risk. Now, she's a PhD student. She studies Raleigh's greenways, exploring their role as urban lifelines that provide ecosystem services and connect people with nature. Her work promotes greener, healthier, and more inclusive ecosystems. Please, Alejandra. You are mute. You are mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen. So can you see? Just
yes.
checking. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. And thank you, Javier. That was very interesting job that you're doing in Spain, in Barcelona. So yes, I am Alejandra Betancourt. I'm a PhD student, and I wanted to talk a little bit about my research in my PhD and what I'm working on right now. So this presentation is titled "The Urban Forest Cover in Raleigh's Greenways" and trying to assess if they are equally distributed. So I don't think that we need much introduction about this, but I do wanted to start the presentation by reminding us why urban forests are so vital and so important in cities, because we know that this ecosystem provides us with a lot of services like reducing the city's heat, controlling and mitigating air pollution, protecting water bodies, improving biodiversity, and they also create these recreational and educational spaces that also boost our mental health through their appealing and calming effects, right? However, we also know that the amount, the type, the condition, and the distribution of these urban forests varies across a urban landscape. And the result of this is that the provision of these services has been found to not always be equally distributed across different population strata, where usually the minority and the more vulnerable population bear the burden of the deteriorated urban forest health and less recover. For example, and thank you also, Javier, for that, because it gives a really good basis of this. It's like we know that more green spaces increase the value of properties. That means that low-income areas have like less recover and more impervious surface. So we also know that several studies have reported that redlanded areas all have lower tree cover and lower ecosystem services across the US. I don't know if everybody in the audience know what is redlining areas, but are these like neighborhoods that were systematically denied several financial services due to discrimination? And across a lot of different big cities in the US, like Atlanta, LA, some cities in Chicago, Ohio, have a lot of studies that they report that these areas have lower tree covers. So what means that they have also like more impervious surfaces, and situation caused by these disparities turn into this ugly positive loop of biodiversity degradation and more vulnerable societies. So this study, part of this research is to try to it's an ongoing research that is trying to fill a gap. First, because we do not know how healthy the urban forest as an ecosystem is in the city of Raleigh, and also if environmental justice is happening in Raleigh. So the main objective of this is the assessment of the health of the urban forest surrounding the Raleigh's greenway system, and we evaluate this across different levels of social vulnerability. So to assess the forest health, we study 4 factors: tree cover, climbers of vines, the condition of the tree, and the invasive cover. So this is Raleigh, and the yellow lines is the greenway system. It's composed by these trails that are mainly for recreational purpose and corridors that is along the water bodies of the city, and is more for protecting water bodies. And this system is like full of unplanted trees, creating a forest cover that is over 70 years old. To compare the health of the 4 factors that I described, initially we used the scope of the population vulnerability using the Social Vulnerability Index. This is an index that was created by the American Community Survey and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So they use 14 factors to assess vulnerability and combine it into several indexes. And we use their overall one that take into consideration all of them, all the 14 factors. And I broke it into 4 levels: low, medium, high, and high vulnerability. And we compare all these factors in these 4 levels. Now, for the spatial and data analysis, we only focus, and here I'm only going to show for 3 of the 4 factors. The results are only focused on 200 feet surrounding the greenways. And for the tree cover layers, we use a 2018 tree cover layer that was created with aerial photos from the county. This is open source data. And for the field, we did 80 plots that were located in the area in these 200 feet, randomly and equally distributed across the vulnerability index, meaning that we have 20 plots for each level. Yeah. So, yes. So within these pictures, I wanted to show you a little bit how the urban forest looks like. In the 80 plot, we found 55 species of mature trees, meaning when I say mature trees, it's like have more than 10 centimeters of DBH. We also evaluate, we found 1,075 records of mature trees in these 80 plots. And we also evaluate diversity index, Shannon more specifically, and the results are very proportionally balanced with the social vulnerability index, and surprisingly good or high with 2.8 and 2.9 results, meaning that we have a good, good number for richness and diversity. We found similar number of trees and species in each level of social vulnerability. And here I want to highlight the importance of the diversity in the forest, even like the urban forest, because the diversity is theoretically very important for the resilience of the forest, right? In theory, a forest with more species is considered more resilient because different species have different adaptations and tolerance to environmental changes, giving these buffers against disruptions and giving more chance to a forest to recover or adapt. Okay, for the tree cover, after the analysis of the satellite photos, we discovered that half of the study area is covered by trees, as you can see in the graph. But the big thing to see here is that you can tell with this graph that there are no significant difference in the tree cover around the greenways and the vulnerability. Actually, it's very equally distributed, and not just for the greenway, because I run the analysis also for the whole city of Raleigh, and it's very equally distributed for the whole city. Almost half of Raleigh is covered by tree cover. For the vines, the results are a little bit more messy. I mean, for each tree within the plot, we measure the level at which the vines cover the tree, right? So it's not that it's more messy, but the results indicate that there is no linear effect with the vulnerability. But we did see with ordinal mixed models that these 2 species, river birch and American sycamore, have significantly more vines. Also, we found that bigger trees and in worse condition have more vines. And in more embedded areas, we have more vines also. So again, I want to underscore here that vines and climbers in this forest is one of the most visually obvious issues because they are competing. We know that vines, most of the species are competing for sunlight, water, and nutrients, blocking the access and weakening the tree, making it more vulnerable, less resilient, and more vulnerable to other impact and other threats like bugs or fungus attacks. Even more, something that is kind of worrying is that a lot of these vines are also invasive. When we switch to the results in our plot of the invasive level, we see more impact. The linear effect, again, of the vulnerability on the invasive level is not statistically relevant, but there is a clear difference. There is more invasive ground cover in the high vulnerability areas. Also, we didn't find a lot of invasive adult trees, remember, more than 10 centimeters DBH. Only 12 records from 4 species, And all of these species are very small sized trees that occupy the understory of the forest. But there is one species that dominates the pole of the seedlings, and it's Chinese privet. This is a result that I wanted to show you from Amandeep's work. Amandeep is a girl that also worked in this project with her master. And she did this graph. She focused more on the invasive. And I wanted to show you because I want to highlight this invasive tree, Chinese privet, that is Ligustro chinense, is the one that dominates in abundance the tree seedling of our data. Finally, the condition, well, we can see again that there is no linear relationship with SVI. And the species that is in good condition, according to our data, comparing with the others, is green ash. And the ones that are in worse condition are the eastern red cedar and white pine. And was not a surprise to see that higher DBH is related with better condition. And again, more vines is related with worse condition of the tree. Now I want to conclude, say thank you and summarize that there is equality in tree cover and population strata in the city. There is no linear relationship between this vulnerability index and the variables that we studied, the 4 factors. However, we can conclude that they are more invasive when there is also greater social vulnerability. I want to underscore as well that this is an equality analysis and not equity. So we actually do not know if this accessibility of all the research that this urban forest is providing, like ecosystem services, like we don't know if the accessibility is the same across the vulnerability strata in the population, right? And finally, we now answer what we have and how it is. So now we can proceed actually to better understand the dynamics of this forest and solve several irregularities like the invasive or vines problems. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alejandra. Really nice presentation. Let me see here the questions. Questions here. Well, I think people can put the questions in this. There is here a questions and answers option on the top of the presentation. But I'd like to start asking Professor Xavier. There is one thing that is quite difficult in the cities. That is the construction companies. I don't know if this is the correct name. The people, these companies that it's a problem in many cities. That's very difficult to implement changes or to I don't know how it works to implement like the superblocks when we have all the effects of this construction company that always have this vision of taking out the space for the buildings and little space for green areas or the population.
Yes, very interesting question, Maria. I think it's important to understand that Superblock has been implemented into already built environment. So we were working directly on already existing streets. So we were not affecting some private plots that could affect some different private interests. So we were working only in public space, basically. Even so, we faced so different controversies and resistance there. Coming from other kind of companies, there is a really strong lobby coming from car industry or developers that are thinking that car is still the way to increase value in the city. It sounds strange, but there is still people thinking that car provides value in the city. So we need to manage that kind of controversy. Basically, we found 2 different levels of difficulties in this way. One of, we could say, ordinary or normal level, discussing with people living in these neighborhoods, retailers, for instance, that of course they are understandably aware about that kind of transformation will affect their business, of course. But there were an upper level coming from these economical lobbies, around really powerful lobbies and media power in the city, just fighting again this culture of a new mobility, giving priority to more sustainable and healthy mobility modes. So we need to manage two of them. It was no easy, of course. Actually, even we are able to live on that kind of places and to check yourself that it's a better place right now. There is still people complaining against that. In fact, the current government, the current local government, the city stopped the program of Superblock 1 year ago because there are still some resistances discussing if the city should continue or not with that kind of transformation. So it's not easy, but for us, the most important thing was during our period, that was only 4 years, to finish some of the works, to offer these new places for people in order to make possible to live within them, and so to check how is this new urban quality, basically. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good example for other places.
I think yes, I think it's important. In every city should find which are the short-term projects that are possible.
Yes.
Because if we are only drawing and planning, it's not able to provide real changes on the city.
Yeah, start from zero. It's impossible. Yeah, we don't have space for that. Yeah, in big
Indeed.
cities. Yes. And now I'm not seeing, but Alejandra, it's quite interesting what you present. But I was thinking about your master was in tropical forests, no? And now you are working with different kind of vegetation. But do you think your results can be applied for both your kind of conclusions? They are the same if you are considering like a tropical forest?
Yes, I think that like an ecosystem, like there are some basics that are needed to like an ecosystem properly like function, and urban forests are this kind of like particular ecosystem because basically they are maintained and sometimes created to fill a purpose, like to provide ecosystem services. So I think that sometimes they have like several rules that can apply to every city or like every area in the world. And I think that there are some basic as an ecosystem that it doesn't matter much where if it's template or if it's tropical or if it's subtropical, you still have like some basic of like diversity, good condition, good water or water condition, good water like soils conditions for an ecosystem like survive and be resilient and provide these ecosystem services. Because at the end, the functionality of the forest, the urban forest, is what give these ecosystem services. So I think that it can be replicated, like the dynamics and the kind of like the specific of the functionality of the forest is going to be a little different if you switch to tropical to template, because you have seasons, you have like different situations, like it change the environmental conditions, of course. But like the basic is going to like, it can be replicated and follow the same like rules that an ecosystem needs. I believe.
Yeah, that's interesting because we are going from one place to the other and then change a lot the effect of the weather also, the climate.
Yes.
Yes,
and sorry.
Yes, sorry, there is one question here. No, sorry. I always have difficulty in finding it. Okay. Sorry, because I'm reading here. There is a question. Yeah, there is a question for Alejandra. What's the feedback from people living nearby on these forests?
Yes, Raleigh is very like proud of their tree cover. People really use the trails and the greenways, so they actually care a lot about the urban forest. It's one of the main attractions of the city. When you arrive here, that's the first thing that you're going to hear. This is a really green city. It has a lot of trails, so you can like walk take a bike, bring your dog, wherever. So the people kind of like have a lot of feedbacks, and they have like a lot of activities and a lot of research and things to do on the greenways. The thing is that sometimes it's very like the management of that greenway is very specific, like specifically located in some areas. So some areas are like left unmanaged, and you can see that have more trash because like another areas that can be like more like not such low, like more low vulnerability, you can see that it's more well maintained, less trash, the trails are more pretty. So that's the thing that we wanted to compare, because we know that people care about the greenway, but they care in different levels.
Thank you, Alejandra. There is a question for Javier. How did you choose the species of plants, trees you planted? How to make sure they thrive? Does the city or the community take care of them? That's
Yes, let me start with the last question. Management and the maintenance of urban greenery in the city of Barcelona is responsibility of a public company that it's called Parks and Garden Company. Mm-hmm. So the maintenance is responsibility of this company. People, neighbors are not in charge of that kind of activities. There are some popular projects that are recovering using trees, just planting new gardens and flowers, but it's a kind of social programs. In general, the maintenance of urban greenery is made by this public company. And is this service of urban gardens who provides the guidance on how to plant new trees and new urban greenery around the city. Among others, for instance, they define which is the distance between new trees and which are the different species that we can plant in the city of Barcelona. It has recently changed because of the new climate conditions in the city. So we are only using local plants in order to be resistant to these new drought conditions. I don't know if you knew that, but we are suffering a really important drought period in the coast, in the Catalan coast. So from 4 years ago, so we are using plants that are really resistant to that kind of drought conditions, among others. So the city council has really important guidance documents regarding that kind of decisions about the species and conditions. To give you an idea, the subsoil in Barcelona is not quite good for urban greenery. We have really plastic subsoil conditions and really impermeable ones. So when we want to plant a new tree, we must remove 1.5 meters of depth of soil and to provide new subsoil in order to improve the conditions for these new trees. So it's not cheap to plant trees in the city of Barcelona. It's expensive. And most of the budget of these new projects were focused on improved conditions for urban greenery. But there are some different important guidance documents providing the information and the conditions and the criteria for the projects.
Thank you. Now, I think now we are reaching the end. No, Charlotte? Yeah, then we are going to thank you very much, both of you, for the presentations. Well, we learn a lot, and it's many challenges that we learn today. And we are going to have a next webinar that will be in 19th of March. That is Wednesday, also in the next month. And we are going to have Tiana Elami. She's the CEO and founder of ANTS, and she will talk about deployment of environmental education to uplift community in an urban heat island. It's a very important topic today. And Dr. Jitendra Sahani, he is a research fellow in UGPN, University of Surrey, and he will talk about enhancing school climate resilience through green, blue, gray infrastructure, experimental and co-design learning. They will talk about very important topics, and everybody is invited to join us next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.